the third chapter of Ricercare Quartets in Quarantine, a live four-part counterpoint in days of uncertainty. My name is Cibrán Sierra, and I'm violinist of Cuarteto Quiroga. As you might know, if you watched the previous episodes, the idea of this project occurred to me weeks ago while I was in the middle of the lockdown, full of questions and reflecting upon these times of uncertainty. And I was far from my quartet colleagues, and I was far from the public stage. And I thought that maybe we could kind of transport the very enlightened idea that gave birth to String Quartet, that is a conversation in music, to kind of a similar four-part counterpoint, but this time with words as we inhabit times of musical silence. So through this series, generously hosted by the String Quartet Biennale of Amsterdam, we have been developing another form of quartet performance that is four voices from different quartets, all of them, of course, groups that are linked to the Amsterdam Quartet Biennale, that have played or will play at the Amsterdam Quartet Biennale. And we have been meeting, and we are meeting now, to discuss and debate about music, about the context of silence we're living, about the future, about programming, about how we live our lives as quartet player, how we relate to audiences, and about the role of quartet and chamber music. Especially now in turbulent times where, critical thinking is probably more needed than ever. We're doing it we're trying to do it at least the same way we do it in concerts, listening, reacting to each other, learning constantly from one another, from each other's differences, ideas, gestures, because we think that more than ever it is important to underline that diversity is a treasure. You're all welcome to post questions in social media while you listen to us. And we hope we have, or topics that you would be interested that come up in the debate. And we hope we might have some time to answer some of them. Unfortunately, probably not everything, because we have a time pressure, but we want to react to you, our audience, the same way we do it when we play on stage. The name of this series is Ricercare because it stands for research, for experiment, for invention, for counterpoint. And this is the concept that will lead these meetings, hoping that, like in a good concert, we will kind of exit from the experience being somehow different as we were when we entered it. Let me introduce to you the outstanding lineup of guests of today's Ricercare. Vineta Sareika, the violinist of the Artemis Quartet. Hello. We have Tereza Stanislav, violinist of the Calder Quartet. Hello, Tereza.
Hi.
And finally, Tomas Djupsjöbacka, cellist of Metaphor. Hello, Tomas.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, Cibrán and everyone.
Hello. Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much for being here. It's really fantastic. And I just want to start, as we've been starting all these conversations, which is asking you, how are you? How have you been coping with these strange moments of silence, of being away from stages, of being away from our quartet, from our normal life? Have you been practicing a lot? Have you not practiced? Have you done something different? How have you experienced this reality? Has it maybe triggered some special creativity or not at all? Who wants to shoot first? Vineta, go.
Yeah, I can start. Yes, Cibrán, first of all, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for this nice initiative and this idea. I think it's a little bit a pity that we had to wait until the crisis to have such a nice idea, and to, also for the audience, of course, but also for us quartet players to have the possibility to meet colleagues and to get to know them. I listened to the first two meetings that you had the last weeks, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Yes. Well, I'm doing fine. Our quartet is actually pretty lucky that we can already start rehearsing since a couple of weeks. Yes, we had a first very strange streaming concert in an empty Dortmund Konzerthaus, so that was a new experience. And now we are preparing for a first real shot with a social distancing audience, like 50 members or something. So so the lockdown is kind of over for us, But I think that this time, of course, in the beginning it was kind of scary and shocking and unexpected, especially the speed. The speed that the life stopped suddenly, and I think it's pretty shocking for everybody. But especially in our quartet, we had the experience and the lessons, the life lessons that we have to accept the situations as they are coming. We had a lot of personal changes and other catastrophes in the group, and you just understand that it doesn't bring anything to be in a panic or to just have to take life as it comes and take the best out of it. So I think the good thing was that the speed is much lower. We had the time to stop, to enjoy silence and to enjoy little things. I'm kind of an everything or nothing person. I needed high speed and challenges and a lot of adrenaline to have this feeling of living before, and I really enjoy it now. To the first time when the main event of a day is to go out in the woods and to just listen to the birds singing, or going to the swimming pool for the first time now, or I don't know, to the museum and taking the whole afternoon to just look at 5 or 10 paintings. I mean, just take time for little things. I think that was the best thing that we could take out of the situation.
How about you guys?
Well, it's been so dramatic for so many people. I mean, the quartet, we were in Hawaii in March. We were on a tour and we had played 2 out of 3 of our concerts, and we were hours away from our final concert in Honolulu, and they canceled it. So we immediately, within 20 minutes, we were on the way to the airport, and within a few days, so many things stopped, like rehearsals, concerts, everything, even the traffic in LA stopped. But my husband and I, we have 2 little girls. We have twins, they're 5 years old, and so they didn't stop, and they're just getting started. So it's been amazing to be with them, but things move very fast. So I'm experiencing everything differently, but especially with music and questions of identity and productivity and all this, has been very changed for me. But my wonderful change is that I'm just spending the whole day with my daughters. So
a little bit more family time also for you, no, Tomas?
Yep. We also have 2 kids, 4 and 2, and we were really lucky that my wife managed to change her travel plans when the corona started, and she got on a flight back home from US here to Finland on the same day as Donald Trump announced the travel ban. So of course we are lucky that we are in the same place here, and things are, relatively speaking, not so bad here in Finland. We have a much smaller number of cases than, for instance, Spain and obviously the US and also Germany. And so we are healthy here, and we can also go out. The lockdown rules are not so strict here, I think, as they were in many other places. But for 2 months we had no daycare with our 4 and 2-year-olds, so that was kind of a full-time job, shall I say? So I'm 2 months late with the kind of thinking about creativity and productivity and that, because most of the time I've been changing diapers or cooking or taking the kids out to exercise or something else. It was definitely a shock in the beginning. We are also both in my quartet and on a private level in the family, we are traveling, of course, like we all do, and it was a shock to just have to stop. I mean, I have never been in the same place for 3 months ever, I think.
And how was
let alone home.
And how was the relationship? Because for me, it was very complicated. I don't have family, so of course, I mean, it was in a way different, but in a very important way. But it was very difficult in the beginning for me to relate to the violin with having this sensation that nothing was going to happen, or not, or having this huge uncertainty about when were things going to happen again, when could we play again, when was, you know, all concerts cancelled, you know, sine die, without any kind of perspective, you know, or horizon, you know, clear horizon. So it really affected the way, you know, I was dealing with my instrument and with music. For some days I could not even bear to listen to music because it kind of hurt somehow. The only state I could tolerate was silence somehow. How did you have any, did it affect your way, or could you just you know, relate normally to music making and to your instrument as usual?
I definitely, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I definitely had huge trouble practicing or studying scores or doing like anything, basically. Super difficult with the motivation, just because everything is so unclear. And when it started, you thought, okay, maybe it'll continue in the summer, and then, you know, the deadline gets pushed and pushed and pushed. So I'm only slowly finding my way back to kind of working, basically. The daycare part helps also in this this aspect here, but it's definitely been quite a shake-up, and also for me, definitely thoughts about why we do this thing called music, and how the profession is built up, and all the structures that come with it. And it's definitely a thing, because you see so many organizations that are in financial trouble and in other kinds of trouble just because of this situation. And I think a lot of us are thinking about how will this go on, because life will probably not be the same also on the organizational levels in a lot of places, I think.
Do you really think that? Do you think life is not going to be the same after this?
I don't think so, but I mean, I try to see it as a rather a positive thing than a negative thing. Like, by that I mean that it's easy to get doomsday feeling, and, you know, everything's gonna go down. That's not what I mean. But I think a lot of organizations, a lot of ensembles, a lot of just musicians in general are forced to think, why do we do this? For whom? How should we relate to the audiences in this new situation? How should we relate to ourselves in this new situation? What is the function of the music we play? How is it relevant to the next human being who lives in quarantine on the other side of the wall? Something like this. I think these kind of questions are forced upon us right now.
What do you think, Vineta or Tereza?
Well, of course, that's the part of this shocking change of our life. But I try to stay positive and to think that it's just it will be finished. I mean, it's just a period of time, and it won't really change the whole structure and the whole philosophy of what we are doing. And especially, you know, we had the chance to do this stream concert a couple of weeks ago, and that was a really strange feeling, just to come on stage and to play for people, but without them being there, you know. And I think after this time where the live concerts were not allowed, people will miss it even more, you know, the real sharing with musicians and with each other. And yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe the fact that there will be less audience in the hall will make this intimacy between artists and the audience even more more intense and more important, and the concentration.
How do you feel about that, Tereza?
yeah.
Well,
I
I'm
really
curious.
hope.
I'm curious about programming. You know, I'm curious how that's going to change, because there's so many different sides to all this. I think in some ways, personally, I have a little bit of time, and I miss listening to just old music, old recordings, you know. But then I know some friends that are composers, they have some time that they haven't had for a long time. Some of them are always behind schedule, you know, and they have now this something that's affected the entire world, you know, and they think that's going to affect what they're playing. And I feel here in the US, you know, we don't things are opening up, but not for concerts, not for live concerts. And so I'm curious to know if the audiences are going to crave the old classics or a mixture, you know, how that's going to be. But I think for string quartet, you know, we all love it. But I think it might be really interesting for the audience, whatever audience we end up seeing, you know, for them to see us probably on a close level, if it's a small hall or whatever, or a small audience, you know, how they're going to see how we've changed through this. You know, I think everybody is going to be changed somehow. And so that'll be, I think, a nice thing to experience.
I am personally looking forward, when it comes to programming, I'm looking forward to something that I always struggled as a listener myself. I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm looking forward to shorter programs, because I always thought somehow that, you know, we were asked very often to like measure the way of music in minutes, you know, and some minutes are heavier than others, and you know, it's like you don't have like 4 steaks in one meal, no. So I mean, you start with some salad, then you have a steak, and then maybe you have some little sweet dolce thing, no. So and sometimes you have this feeling that, okay, I have to play 4 huge pieces of meat, you know. And now maybe because of this the logistic problems, you know, I'm thinking maybe there's a moment to actually have a program with, you know, a selected 45 minutes intense piece, which everyone can leave the audience, the whole concert hall, feeling that I'm hungry for more, you know, I want to come back instead of, wow, that was long and hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was what I
Little
mean by appreciating and enjoying little things and having much more attention to less, you know. I think that the world will be forced to go back from this even more and even bigger and more shiny and
louder,
more
faster.
all of those you know, like yeah. And now it's a natural moment that has come, maybe of course in a catastrophic way in the beginning, but if we try to see the positive out of it, I think that's the moment to
like
come
for
back
you,
to the
Tomas, Tereza, for
basics and
example,
come
in
back to the
the same way that
quintessence
that
of
Vineta is saying,
things.
is there anything, for example, that you would guys said, if I could, I would change this. This is what I would change in terms, for example, programming or whatever you would you could think about.
Well, I think there will be even more focus on the things that have been neglected, like has been a topic now very strongly, female composers, composers from other, basically who are not white men, to bring more light on what kind of music we've been missing out. I definitely think that is reflecting society and all the big events that are occurring now. I'm thinking especially about in the US at the moment, but what we can read in the media over here. I think that will highlight the kind of the necessity to connect the concert program into the now.
Yeah.
It doesn't, of course, this has nothing to do with excluding old masterpieces, but I think that the relevance, in order for the relevance to be bigger for the audiences, there has to be a stronger connection to the now. I also welcome the idea of the shorter programs, even if it's just for the banal reason of the concert hall having to have 60 minutes of time to do the ventilation. If they do two sets for the for the audience to change, they have to have the ventilation time, and the set cannot be longer than 60 minutes. I think this would be a good, refreshing development. There's nothing to say that the concert format has to stay the same all the time.
Definitely. What about you, Tereza?
And I think also, maybe not so much speaking about the programming, but this crazy traveling that we have been doing all this time. I would be happy that if the situation brings us in a more regional direction, or I don't know. Of course, sometimes it's very nice to go on a tour to America or to Asia, but most of the time, I think we could just also meet people that are in our region, and and maybe not to travel so crazy distances
and to
every day
care
play
about them,
a long
to
program
care about the
in a
people around us. I
different
mean, that's something that...
Yeah, I think that we were
Do you feel
going
the
in a
same way,
direction that
Tereza?
is really not human anymore.
I'm
over
really
the limit.
hoping that a lot of what's happening now is going to continue in a much bigger way, and I hope a lot of organizations are going to put a lot of time and energy into bringing classical music to different audiences. I just hope, like Vineta said, that it's more localized and there's more of a focus. And same with programming. I hope that this focus on diversity and all that just continues more and more, because as we know, there's so much out there, and we don't always have the opportunity to perform it.
One thing that strikes me when we're talking all this is and when you open the media, I mean, the favorite word nowadays is crisis, no? And as we were discussing the other day, the etymology of crisis is very interesting in the sense that it actually means taking a diversion of paths, a crossroad, and also it's linked to the etymology of critical thinking, and somehow I feel in that sense I would like to ask you something that did not pop out on the other conversations, but I think it's very interesting, because quartets in a way are kind of, they live out of small capsules of crisis somehow. I mean, we are constantly facing crossroads, and that somehow it creates this necessity of actually debating everything. How do you live in your quartets the day-to-day crisis somehow? How is it for you?
Well, I don't have any.
You don't have any.
I just started. No, I mean, we just put together a program, a recording and a program. We were supposed to be playing at the Ojai Festival, so we just put together some pieces, and it was so inspiring to hear everybody's thoughts on what to put together and why, and so that's I miss them. I miss rehearsals so much, but at least we can talk and discuss things like this, and it's inspiring in that way.
How about you guys? How do you face conflict, or how you face crisis? How do you manage such a thing, especially in quartets that are live for years and years and years,
Well, I think there are many different elements that are important to, for a healthy and well-functioning quartet life. But I think you can say it also about a functioning marriage or functioning any group of people, I believe. First of all, I think that every member really has to feel respected in the group. And every member has to have the feeling that the voice that he has or she has is heard, and that every idea is tried, or that there's not a situation that somebody tells, oh, maybe we could play this in such tempo, and the other members immediately says, oh, this is a bad idea. This is kind of a rule in our quartet also, that every idea has to be tried at least once before we reject it, and of course, I don't know, things like time management, for example, or a good balance between speaking and actually playing in a rehearsal. This is also a fragile matter. If there's too much philosophing, and then in the concert you just realize that there is a lack of practical experience of playing, that the members know there is some kind of a timing in the end of this bar, but how it actually feels, there hasn't been enough exercise, So yeah, there are really, maybe you guys have even more ideas about what golden rules should be. I suppose that every quartet has its different, but
yeah.
Those
I guess
are the
this
first
is a
ones that come
never-ending,
to my mind.
Never-ending journey in that sense. But I find
Absolutely.
listening one of the biggest challenges, but also actually one of the most important kind of details. Because if you actually listen to what your colleague is suggesting, for instance, if it's a musical idea, it's very easy to get colored by using this or using that. But if you make a real effort to try and listen what she or he is trying to get to, also keeping in mind that sometimes we open our mouths with ideas that are only about to be born, so to say. It's not, we don't always have the ready concept that we're just lecturing about, and sometimes the patience to maybe together help each other kind of formulate the idea to a better, more ready, concrete way of doing things that you can then try out in practice. I find that challenging but very important. And then we also have this thing that if you don't try it, then you're not allowed to reject it, like Vineta said. So that's definitely an important topic, the listening.
We came to the realization that we're so different. I don't know if it happens between the different characters of your groups. We're so different that if we leave it to just the normal listening, then some people will talk naturally much more than, or have much more initiative than others, which will tend to be more somehow, or not, shyer, or have more trouble to face certain topics. So we've come to we've practiced for years already we divide equally the time, with a stopwatch, so that somehow with a stopwatch. So yeah, the Spanish quartet, huh?
Sounds very German.
So somehow we
Wow.
give everyone, everyone feels that you have your time, you will have your time to to say whatever you have, and it will be somehow, and also that you will have the responsibility to also you need to have your time. I mean, so you need to give something, because somehow it felt otherwise it could always be so uneven somehow because of the different personalities. But what happens, for example, when typical situation, you do try something, as Vineta suggested and Tomas were saying, you do try something, and you try two alternatives and you are completely undecided. I mean, 2 + 2, so to say, the problem of being an even group. What do you do, Tereza, for example, when you come to that moment? How do you handle that situation?
Well, I mean, obviously it depends what it is, but I think for me, a lot of times I'd like to let it sit. I think we all know time plays such a huge part in what we do, and it changes overnight, or it changes a week later, or after a performance. So I think I prefer if I'm really seeing both, like the benefit to ideas, I think I prefer to just sit on it. And if it's 10 minutes before a concert, then
Not
no.
good. Not good.
Not just go with the majority or whatever. But I think time is such a great indicator, and I think so far we seem to agree. Eventually. So, but that's my experience.
And what about you?
We already had such a situation some time ago. I remember. I think it was the old group still, where we had two ideas that were both totally possible, and we were convinced about both of them. So we just in a quartet you have this luxury to play the programs many times. So we just decided, okay, first concert we play this one, and the next day we play the other one, and sometimes, very often, we also record our concerts or playthroughs, and then that's another view on the situation, on the problems. It's sometimes you cannot be so objective when you're playing and listening at the same time. So
did it resolve itself, or did you resolve it, or did it always stay that you like these plays?
Yeah, well, in the end, we chose one, I think, but both of the ideas were
this is where
valid
in classical
for
repertoire where you have
time.
repeats.
It
becomes a very useful tool. Never leave out the repeats, because otherwise you can't try out the other idea in the repeat.
But that can be a conflict itself. Do we do or we do not do the repeat?
That's what I mean. Don't always do them, because
always
you can try the other.
Well, now in Corona times with reduced programs.
And something again. Of course, you kind of mentioned it, Vineta, before. Of course, in your quartet is very recent somehow, but also for you, it's very interesting somehow that we have here different situations. I think, Tomas, you were in the very beginning or in your quartet. Tereza just arrived 2 years ago or something like that to your quartet, and not even. Okay, so September. Okay, so you're really the newcomer to the group. And Vineta, you arrived to Quartet that it already existed, but now through time it has evolved with other people. How is the balance between the personality of the group and the personality of the members? I mean, because we all know that there is something that lies, that is built. So it creates kind of an infrastructure which gives personality to the quartet, and even despite of changes, there is something which is there. But of course, new members always bring new things. How do you think the balance in your experience, or how it is for you, for example, to come into a new quartet, or how do you feel, Vineta, the difference of how you felt coming into a group that it existed already, and now being in a group that you are the one that comes from behind? How is this? Because I think people only see the result, the top of the iceberg, and what is beneath the surface for you somehow with this conflict again, this between persona. Public persona of the group and the individual persona. Yeah, fascinating.
Oh, difficult question. I think every quartet and every change is so different from each other that there's not one answer, I think. Well, in our experience, I think the most important thing is really, really to take time to find the right people to come into the quartet. Because it's such a small group and such a delicate balance and feeling. And if there's one characteristic of a new member that doesn't completely fit, of course it should be different and very strong personalities. But I think you need to find people who are coming to the quartet because they enjoy the way it plays. It's the same aesthetics, the same taste, musical taste. This is really different, really, really very important. And then I think, of course, team players. People who know what it means to not to be in the center, but to be. To know the art of compromise and to be very patient. We all know that in the quartet, sometimes the detailed work can go for hours, and we need people who really enjoy this
And if I may ask, what
microscopic,
if you would have to
detailed
measure
work.
somehow? Because I
So-
think your perspective is very interesting. If you would have to measure, what was harder for you or more, challenging, to come into a quartet as a new member, or to adapt the group to new members coming after a while? Situation.
Well, it's a totally different situation. When I came into the quartet, I didn't really have time to to think about it. It all happened so quickly, and once I was in the quartet, I had a mountain of repertoire that I had to learn in 2 months. Like starting with Schubert G and Große Fuge and all the Mendelssohn. So I was like just practicing, and of course very happy to be in a group that is just so has such an experience, and it felt like sitting
Driving.
in a limousine that is already driving in a high speed. So that was a fantastic feeling, of course, and a lot of responsibility also. But finding new members, what I found difficult, from the moment you decide who it's going to be, and you start the process of building the new sound and adapting to the members, it's really exciting, and it's a lot of great emotions, and you try to start to know each other. It's like a honeymoon, of course you choose people that you think are great players and great human beings, and from that moment it's all fine. Of course it's a long way and lots of work, but it's only positive. But the most difficult situation is that transition, of course. I remember the moment when Eki told us, our cellist told us like 2-3 years ago, that he's going to leave the group, and those first months, just to get to the point, okay, we are playing and we are trying to get new members, and then try to imagine the group in a new constellation, and sometimes you have the idea, this player could maybe match, and then you fantasize and imagine the group with that person, then you meet him, and after 10 seconds you know that it's just no way. So there are lots of unexpected
Just for
turns,
people who are
this is
coming in
really,
to watch us and
really
have
hard.
started late, we are talking with Vineta, Sareika from the Artemis Quartet, with Tereza, Stanislav from the Calder Quartet, and with Tomas, Djupsjöbacka from Metaphor. Tereza, what about you? For example, you were playing in another quartet for some time, and now you said from September. So it's quite recent that you're in the Calder. How was coming into a quartet which was already as in motion as Vineta was explaining?
It was, I can't imagine nicer people to work with, so that makes a big difference. I've played quartets for so long, and sometimes for a long time, and they were all together since 1998, which is amazing. And so it was a bit terrifying, because even though I know the repertoire and I play in a string quartet, I know what it's like, to play together for so long, and you add somebody new, and you feel like everything you do sticks out. It's like crazy. But it's been so nice. I respect all of them so much, and I love hearing their opinions, and while they're playing, and I love getting the input back. And so it's been I filled in a while ago, because the other violinist he had a baby, so that was very different. It was a huge amount of repertoire in a short amount of rehearsal time, and so you're just trying to achieve the best performance possible, without the luxury of really getting to know through
That
rehearsals.
is something interesting because I think most quartets, from what I know, and please do tell me if it's different. Most quartets, when one of the members has to take a leave of absence for any reason, which can be having a problem, being sick, or having a baby and taking time off. Normally quartets take other quartet players in to keep with their commitments and play. If I understood right, Metaphor does not do that.
We've never done that. No.
You've never done that.
No.
So you've kind of always adapted and you've became Meta 3 or something.
Yeah.
or adapt even with new ideas of programming. No.
Yes, we sometimes manage to change the programs into solo, duo, trio, something, or invite a pianist or something like this. But we've never played quartet repertoire with a player that is not Metaphor.
And that is a conscious decision, or that is something which just ended up happening like that?
Well, we had a few situations where we were facing this question: should we take somebody to replace? And the first time it happened was, I think, more than 10 years ago. I can't remember which year it was, but quite a long time ago. And then we just felt that for that, in that context, whether it was because it was too many big pieces, we just decided it was not. We didn't want to kind of break the group somehow by just taking in someone for like 2 concerts or something. And so then we either canceled or we simply changed the program not to be quartet repertoire. And yes, since then we kind of kept to that
strategy.
Yeah.
I have a funny story. This person that I knew joined a long existing quartet, and he was the youngest, and they were all men. And he was a little nervous because his wife got pregnant, and he was saying, I'm not sure if baby comes early or whatever, or what are we going to do? What should I do? And I think each one of them had children, and they said, oh, it's easy. You just induce labor between the days that we don't have concerts. You have the baby, you're there for the baby, and you come and play the concert. That's another sort of dramatic approach.
That's definitely a non-Scandinavian approach, I would say. You were going to say something.
I had a question actually for Tereza, because I'm curious if since you have the experience of having played quartet and then joined another quartet, did you have many situations, and if so, how did it feel when you play rep that you already know very well, and then when you change the group, somehow your default or your first kind of way of playing that passage or phrase or whatever, that it somehow didn't fit, or it felt like, no, wait, these people want to do it differently? I'm curious if you can describe something about that process.
Yeah, I mean, of course that happens too. And I think, I think it's so particular to the individuals in the group, and so I think sometimes if I felt strongly about something and we would try it, I would then hear that it just didn't work with that configuration of people. And so it didn't bother me. I could understand that it was just not a right fit. So many times, they would play. I think timing in something that I've played a lot, that's been the hardest. If either time is not taken or it is taken, and you have it so in your body that without meaning to, you end up not being with the others, and that's hard, because I don't want it to feel like I'm doing it on purpose, but it's just, after you've done it for so long, you end up sort of being on the outside. But so much what we do, especially something like Beethoven, I like their style that, we put it together with. And so I end up being convinced of something that I have never done, or wouldn't have considered, and so it's been really positive.
So do you think it's the personal part or the interpretation part that normally is more complicated somehow? A
When you put
nuance,
together
you know,
a piece?
when you have to come in with new members or a new member, something to is the musical part or is the personal, or both, I guess?
Yeah, I mean it's both, right? If you have if you have an aggressive idea that's presented in an aggressive way, it's hard to go with that. And they don't do that. So, but I think in the end, it's just the interpretation, and you have to understand it, you know, not just intellectually but emotionally. So, and
to me,
Yeah.
this relates a little bit to what you were talking about before, Cibrán, with the crisis thing.
Yeah.
When you disagree, and also it relates to the Vineta's comment about playing repertoire, multiple concerts, you can try different ideas, because, and coming back to what you just said now, Tereza, about sometimes it doesn't work with your idea, doesn't work with that set of people, or you weren't able to explain it in a way that the others are convinced or something. But I find that, at least for me, it's helpful to think about that sort of experience when you think that there's one way, or you have one way that the piece has to go, or something that is really, is that really so? Because it depends so much on the context and the people and the communication and the stuff. There's always another way somehow. And if you can just agree on, if you can do the same way in the same concert, that's kind of, that's a lot already.
I always like to think that, I mean, somehow interpretation is just how you put the camera onto, you know, on a spot, you know, I mean, and whether you decide to film the hand like this or like this or like this, it is still my hand. I mean, so there's nothing more true than something else, as long as you don't show my foot, you know what I mean? Because then, of course, then you're going too far away. But I mean, I think that somehow, what do you think, guys? I feel that somehow as quartet players, we're privileged of what we have the privilege to, what you were mentioned before, Vineta, this the joy of enjoying small things and the time somehow to dedicate to try, as you were both also saying, to try many possible choices, which maybe in other contexts of music making, they do not exist. And maybe a player gets to play the symphony the way the conductor decides he wants to do it, and there's no other way around, because that's the way it has to be. You know, we have 4 days for the concert. And do you think that makes string quartet performances in a way have more depth, or in the end, you know, you only get what you decide? I mean, it's not a matter of how much you experienced, you know, it's the surface which only stays in terms of the result of performance for the audience, you know. Do you think audiences can feel that we've been trying and trying and trying, and finally we decided for this? Or they just, you know, you can only see the result?
Well, I think that the string quartet is the most sensitive of all music-making forms. I really believe that the string quartet performance needs more detail and more time, you know, to become a mature performance from all 4 members. That it's so transparent. It's just really like being naked. I mean, you cannot hide anything. The intonation has to be perfect, and the timings and the way you are you're making this, the sound, the bow speed and pressure. You have to decide about so many things. So I think that's a necessity. And of course, what I also observe more and more since I'm playing quartet, that every time I'm asked to play with some other people, in some summer festival, for example, also if they're fantastic musicians, there is some kind of frustration always coming, because you're used to so much detail, and you're used to this one body that really breathes together and make decisions in a very natural way. Or, for example, playing a solo concerto where you just get 2 hours rehearsal sometimes for some Sibelius or whatever. I mean, of course, you do your best, but it's very
But
difficult.
do you think, for example, this is
in
very
the
interesting
end,
somehow
be really
because you
happy
are
about
all
what
having
happens.
other things. Do you think, like when you play solo, for example, Vineta with a symphony orchestra accompanying you, or when you lead an orchestra, Tereza, or when you conduct Tomas, for example, do you feel people in who you're working with, or even the audiences, they really feel you are a quartet player? Is there something? Is there something like a stigma in a positive way? That quartet gives you a brand that somehow that makes you approach music making in a specific way, or not necessarily?
Well, for me, I definitely notice my backpack, if you want to call the quartet the backpack in this case. If I go and conduct, and I sometimes even feel that the orchestra, especially if it's a place where I know a little bit that the musicians that I work with, that they simply expect the quartet knowledge and the expertise of that field to be transferred into the orchestral setting. And obviously the time limits are quite different, so you do what you can. But I find it incredibly fascinating right now at this point for myself personally, professionally, to try and combine those things, to see which are the like elements that you can take from playing quartets for 18 years in my case. Which elements can you use, and the knowledge that you've gained, which ones can you use to transfer to quickly implement, or at least start the implement for an orchestral setting? Because it's not only about practicing intonation for hours, etc., like we always do in the quartets, or definitely in the beginning. It's not always about only that. I find also that there is a certain way of the nonverbal communication that you can really practice, and it's very difficult, obviously. But if you start that path, for instance, now if I look at myself as in the conducting role, if you start that path together with an orchestra and try to get somewhere, it is miles more interesting music making than to just play the concert in 2 days and make sure you cut the corners and make everything. So in that sense, I think there's definitely a relation of the things that you can do in a string quartet that you can.
How about for you? Is there a mindset of the quartet player that is visible when you do other things, Tereza or Vineta?
Yeah, I think if you have this philosophy that everybody's opinion should be considered, and and you really listen as much as you can, and you try to be so flexible, I think it can be difficult with somebody who's trying but just hasn't used those skills as much. So, but and it can take longer than you would want.
And I think if you're a quartet player, you just can't arrive in front of an orchestra as a soloist and play your thing. Of course, you will be in communication, constant dialogue with the other musicians, and you will have an immediate reaction when there is a wind solo or a clarinet solo or what. There is this immediate wish of connecting. That is maybe difficult.
Can I also just add to that if I now again compare the conducting and the quartet player roles, that in a way the conductor's role, depending a little bit on repertoire of course, but ideally it is to connect every musician on stage to play chamber music, and you're just helping to kind of
the medium
distribute the rehearsal time and focus on the whatever somebody has to lead the time management, because you can't have 65 people lead time management. That doesn't work. But in the end, we are all the same in front of the music, and it is chamber music in the end. And it's this for me is very far from this kind of, you know.
Well, guys, I think we could be here forever. It's really so much fun to talk to you and so inspiring, and I think many great ideas are coming out. But of course, we have to respect a certain timing. So I want to just finish by asking something that I'm asking also everyone these days. Have you been relating to any specific music these days which has somehow appealed you in a way that you could say, you know, this moment we experience, this lockdown or this crisis, to use the same term or something, makes me think of this music or something like that? Is there any music for the quarantine, for the corona time?
My answer to this is a little bit multi-layered, because one layer for me is the endless children's songs that are going on in this house, rhymes in various languages. So that's kind of one soundtrack. And then in the beginning, when it started, I kind of told myself that, okay, now you're going to listen to all kinds of new pieces and maybe same composers, but just pieces that you didn't hear before. And so one day I listened to Sally Beamish's complete output of viola concertos in one day. And then at the same time, kind of getting back to a Mozart symphony was somehow amazing. In the clarity and the lightness and just pure inspiration that it gave. I think the end answer is that it's also dependent a little bit on it's not the same music in the beginning of the shock that you need 3 months in or 6 months in or however long this is going to go. That the beauty is also that you can find different pieces or different moods for whatever the situation.
What about you, Tereza or Vineta? Anything special?
Well, I really used this lockdown period to come back to silence, I have to say, and to just settle down and to save the energy and the inspiration for the time when music comes back to me again. But right now, a very special piece for me and for us is the Opus 132 of Beethoven that we're just learning in the new constellation, and I think it fantastically connects to this time where there was this incredible Heiliger Dankesang, where you just feel the gratitude of having the chance to play, to be alive and to play music together again, and feel the hope that we are going to connect
Tereza?
also with audiences and with people around.
Well, I think my day is a huge contrast of high to low energy, and so during the day it's been, it's been nice to present as much variety of music to our girls as we can, from our and so we're also exploring some sort of a lot of pop music or dance music that I never listened to, and it's fun to see their reaction to it. And when the day is done and I'm so tired beyond belief, and it's also, I don't think I have the energy to listen to a fast crazy piece of violin or quartet, but I've always enjoyed, but I think particularly a few times I've felt so peaceful and fulfilled just listening to an old ancient vocal piece. It's just 4 or 5 voices
Harmony.
of just pure harmony, and it has just felt so good. So I'm grateful
Well,
for that.
thank you very much. Really, it has been a really big pleasure to talk to you. Thank you, Vineta. Thank you, Tomas, and thank you, Tereza, for joining us in this little quest, trying to find out who we are and how we feel as quartet players in these days. Thank you, everyone that has been listening. As you know, you can also listen to this again and again, as many times as you want in YouTube, and you can also access the previous episodes. And yeah, see you soon. We will announce the next session very soon in our social media, the String Quartet Biennale of Amsterdam. And thanks to the String Quartet Biennale of Amsterdam for making these conversations, this Ricercare possible. So take care, all of you. Keep healthy, stay healthy, and may the force of String Quartet be with you. All the best.
Thank
Yes.
you, you too.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.